my beauties. So today, welcome back to my channel. What we're going to be doing is we're going to hang out and talk about the new Subculture palette by Anastasia Beverly Hills. This is like a super talked about right now palette on YouTube. There's a lot of like controversy going on with it, that it's like too pigmented, that it has a lot of fallout, that some people love it, some people hate it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and give you guys like my thoughts and my opinion on it. I am a complete, eyeshadow palette fanatic. I absolutely love to collect good shadows. The eye makeup is what gets me excited the most. And so I'm also going to be comparing it to the actual Modern Renaissance by Anastasia Beverly Hills. The sister palette that, is so popular and one of the best palettes out there. And so I wanted to compare it and kind of see what all the fuss is about, because people are getting really, really upset about this palette and almost angry that, it has so much fallout, it's too pigmented, people can't use it, there's on and off like reviews of good versus bad. And so I want to see what all the fuss is about, because in my opinion, it's just an eyeshadow palette, for crying out loud. If you really dislike it, you can go ahead and return it. I do believe that it's really pigmented, and for me, in my opinion, it is my personal opinion that more pigmented shadows are much better than too little of a pigmented shadow. But that's just me. I have been, using eyeshadow palettes for a long time. I've been playing around with shadow forever and with different pigments. And so I really wanted to talk about it. And so let's get to it. So this is what the actual palette looks like. It has that same kind of velvety touch that the other Renaissance palette has. It has 14 shadows, and this is more definitely toned down, smoky palette. It's not like an everyday type of palette. It has 0.02 ounces of product in each, which is exactly the same as this palette has. Let me open them up and compare them both. So this is what the actual Renaissance palette looks like, and this is the new Subculture palette. As you guys can see, this is definitely more of like an everyday type of look. It has a lot of lighter shadows, even though it does have a few, darker, deeper shades. This one, on the other hand, even though it does have like those vibrant pops of color, it is definitely more of like a smokier palette. So definitely, darker shades. You have really smoky tones in here from the greens, the blues, the purples. And so I will go ahead and see if I can do like a look for you guys. Like I said, I will do a different video just swatching the whole palette on its own. I think that I feel like this palette would be not so great for beginners because it does have a lot of fallout. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'm not, saying anything that I don't think is correct. So I do think it has a lot of fallout. I do think it is super pigmented though, and I feel like a lot of the palettes that are super pigmented usually do have quite a bit of fallout, especially the mattes. The shimmers aren't like, they don't have any fallout. It's just the mattes. I'm not sure if it depends on like how they're pressed or how much pigment, they have in the actual shadow, but there is a lot of fallout. So I would not recommend this for beginners. I would not recommend this for anyone who just usually does, really kind of everyday neutral eyes, unless you do want like a very interesting palette. There was also some controversy going on that this is like a ripoff of the Jeffree Star's androgyny palette, because it has like a lot of similar shades. I don't believe that it is like a dupe for it by any means. I feel like Anastasia Beverly Hills has like its own formula, its own different shades and colors. And so let's go ahead and make a little quick tutorial with this. There is 2 actual shimmers in here. There's one that looks really light, but this is more of like a really what is it called? It's not an actual like a light, it's more of like a shimmery shade, and it's definitely not a shimmer. It's more of a satin finish. It has that kind of opalescence to it because its swatch is kind of pink. So there isn't really like, if I was to actually like review this palette, I don't think I'd be able to use this whole palette in one without having the need to reach for another palette, because I don't really have like a setting shade, even though this one right here is really nice of a transition shade. I don't have something to actually like set my primer, and I don't really see a really nice highlighting shade, you know, either on the inner corner or under the brow bone, because this is, like I said, more of like a pink shade. And for me, what was really interesting was this shade right here called Electric. It looks so beautiful in the pan, but when you swatch it, it's really stiff. And it does transfer on a finger, but it takes a little bit of building up to do. And compared to all the other shadows, even this other kind of metallic shadow, it's a lot more stiff and it requires more like building up to do. The other shadows, on the other hand, they're like super hyper pigmented to the point where I say it's not for a palette for beginners, because it has so much pigment. It does have a lot of fallout. So you have to use like a very light hand. But for people that are like, oh my gosh, this palette is unusable, you do have to be careful with it. But I feel like you can come out with really nice looks with this palette. And I've used this palette. I haven't played around with like these 3 darker shades, but I've done a couple other looks with this palette, and I feel like the pigmentation is really like spot on. I personally don't think it's too much, unless, like I said, you're a really beginner where you don't really have a lot of experience like with shadow, especially like darker tones, because it can get really messy. But if you are careful, I feel like this palette is a very interesting, different, unique palette. And so I will also show you guys like a couple of tricks of mine that I use that kind of help me, you know, get the eye look I really want to without it getting too messy or too crazy. And so let's begin. I also wanted to mention that these shadows, I feel like because they are so pigmented, you don't want to mix any wet medium onto it or with it. Maybe only with the metallic shade right here or right here. Otherwise, I do feel like if you wet the shadows at all, they do become darker and the pigmentation does kind of change. But as for right now, what I'm going to do is I have my base of makeup on. I'm going to go ahead and use the Milani base primer on my eyes just to kind of, you know, prime my eyeballs. And I'm going to use the tiniest little amount. Whew. I'm sorry if I'm going too fast. I had some coffee this morning. I was watching a bunch of other videos, and so I am on the roll to get this going. So I kind of just take that little drop of primer and kind of apply it all over my lid just to get that kind of tacky base. But like I said, we don't want, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the primer because we don't want like an actual wet base on your eyes for these shadows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in to like a finishing powder. This is just like a regular face setting powder from the drugstore. One of my favorites is, it's super finely milled, super really smooth and creamy of like a powder. And I'm just going to go into this and I'm just going to go ahead and set my eyes, set the primer just so I have a really nice base that's going to allow me to blend all the shadows really nicely and kind of effortlessly on. And I'm gonna do both of the eyes, and I'm just putting it all over just so there isn't that really like tacky layer on there. And what I'm also gonna do is a tip, take the same powder with my little cute Lisa Frank brush, and I'm gonna take it and kind of really generously apply it underneath my eye just in case there is any kind of fallout. You can like pretty much bake with this or any other powder, just so if there is any fallout, you can just wipe it away after. And I know I'm gonna look kind of funky like a ghost, but I want the excess amount of powder underneath my eye just in case it gets, like it does actually get messy. So once I've done that, and you can always also, if you're working with, you know, you can do your transition shade and then you can take a paper towel and even like place it underneath just to be on the safe side. But I'm just going to try to do it without it and see how it goes. So what I'm going to go is I'm going to go ahead, and it also comes with this really nice, good quality of a brush in here. And I'm going to go ahead and use this fluffy side with the brush that came in the palette. And I'm going to go kind of crazy. What I'm thinking of doing is doing like a green and red type of look. So we'll see how that goes. And I'm going to go into this red as my transition. I'm not going to use anything else because I did set my eye. And I'm just going to literally so gently go ahead and tap it in the shadow. And then I'm going to take some of the excess off. And I'm going to start on the outside and kind of gently bring it all the way in. And you want to make sure it's blended. And what's really important with really pigmented shadows is that you don't want a lot of the actual shadow on your brush, because then that's when it kind of gets messy and you can't really control it. But this is going to be a pretty quick, easy, smoky eye. So I'm going to use this red. This is the shade All Star. I'm just going to use that in the crease. And they do tend to look a little bit, maybe not even darker, but more pigmented on the eye than the actual shadow in the palette. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other eye. So I'm going to take a little bit. See how like pigmented these shadows are? And there is a little bit of fallout, but if you don't tap it like hard into it, I feel like this palette and these shadows can go a really long way. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And I'm just going to kind of blend this into the actual crease as my transition color. All right. And I'm just going to blend it upwards. And this is more of like a maroon type of shade. It's not really red. It has more of like a earthier tone to it. And I don't even spend that much time with blending because I feel like, you know, with really pigmented shadows, you don't really need to. And so there, that's done. I have it in the crease. I might even add a little bit more of this red, like right in the very, very corner, just to kind of get it in there. See, you gotta be careful. But the thing is, people say like, oh my gosh, this is an awful palette. In my opinion, this is a great palette because unless you do have a really, like you're hard-handed and, you know, you kind of go crazy with your shadows. Like I said, I love super pigmented shadows, you know, from Natasha Denona to the Vice Art palettes. I feel like the better quality shadows are really pigmented. Yes, there might be a little bit of fallout or even a lot of fallout, but if you're really like careful, you can create a really nice look super, super effortlessly because they are so pigmented. You don't need to work a lot to kind of blend and blend and blend and blend. So now that I have the crease as a red, and you guys can see, like, it's not patchy. It's not like going all over the place, but you just have to know how to use it and know how to control it. So now I'm gonna go in with the other side, and this is more of like a more dense of a brush on the other side of the Anastasia Beverly Hills brush. And I'm gonna go and attempt to use this little green right here. I really like this color. It's kind of like an army green. And I'm gonna take it, not too much. I'm gonna tap off the excess and I'm gonna place this on the inner corner on my lid. And I'm just gonna gently pat it, like gently pat it, just so it doesn't go. I'm not gonna do like crazy motions with my brush. I'm just gonna gently pat it. And because I don't have so much product on the brush, like it's not even falling out. Like I'm looking close in the mirror and it's not even falling out. So I'm just gonna focus this shade like right here and just kind of maybe like halfway, try to kind of build it up and just gently tapping it. And it's blending beautifully. You know, I feel like if you know the tricks of how to use a super pigmented palette, you're not gonna have any issues with it, you know, but there is kind of procedures or tips you should take. So I'm gonna do the same thing on the other eye and I'm gonna just gently pat, 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 pat. Like not going too crazy. It's blending so nicely into the eye and into the red. Like I love this palette. Like I feel like besides like the two shades, this one right here, which is the cube, and then the electric, which kind of disappointed me a little bit, I feel like the rest of the palette, the mattes are just exquisite, you know? All right, so now that I have that on, I'm gonna go in with a little bit more because I feel like this side isn't as dark. All right. And now I'm going to take the same like brush side that I used for Destiny, this green one right here, and I'm going to take it to Untamed, this super kind of sea green blue, and I'm going to take it, it's actually more green, this one's a little bit more blue, And I'm gonna take it, once again, really gently. I'm not going like all over the palette. I'm just tapping it gently just to get in between the bristles. I'm gonna tap it off. And then I'm gonna apply this on the other side, right underneath the red. And once again, I'm just gonna do kind of tapping motions. And I'm gonna go ahead and blend it in with the green. With the lighter green, with the olive green. Then I'm gonna take a little bit more of this darker one. And I'm gonna just keep patting, just gently. Because you can always add a little more, but it's kind of hard to take it off later. You know what I mean? Less is more, especially with super pigmented shadows. All right. And then I'm gonna go back in and kind of blend it in with the red, but so far so good. I'm gonna go ahead and go again to this little Untamed shade and do the other eye. And see, if I want a little bit more shadow and a little bit more pigment, like I don't even need to tap it off. If you're actually, you know, cautious of how you dip the brush in, you know what I mean? Like, see, it's effortless. And I don't have any fallout underneath my eyes. Like, I don't know if you guys can see, but there's nothing for me to wipe off because, you know, you need to know how to control these shadows. And like I said, you know, I feel like someone that doesn't really have a lot of experience with dark, smoky shades will have a little bit of issue with this, but that doesn't mean that the actual palette is really bad, you know, because there's so many YouTubers that are hating on this palette and the quality because it's so super pigmented, it's unusable, and that's just not true, you know. I just feel like you kind of have to know what you're doing and control your pigment, and it's not like it's that much more work to do, you know. So now that that's done, I'm gonna go ahead and take a little slanted brush like this. And I'm gonna go into the lighter olive green, Destiny right here. And I'm gonna take this, tap it off, and I'm gonna apply this on the lower lash line. Just kind of smudging it in with the red. And kind of just gently kind of, you know, smudging it. And you wanna make sure that for the lower lash line, you do like tap off a lot of the excess because that's when it can get a little bit messy. But I'm gonna go back in and just gently, gently tap, like I'm barely touching the shadow. And then I'm gonna take it onto my other eye and kind of blend and do the same thing. All right. Okay, so now that that's done, it is like they're so dark and creamy and pigmented. I really do enjoy them. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back to the fluffy brush and I'm gonna take the shade All-Star one more time, just gently tapping it. And then I'm gonna go back and kind of make sure that these two are blended and really seamless. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna almost like take it all the way down with whatever I have left on my brush. So it's kind of more effortless and seamless. And then I'm gonna go back in again, very gently, you just have to be careful. And then do the same thing to the other side. To give you that really nice of a transition. Okay, now that I moved a little bit down, I do see a tiny bit of fallout like on my lower lash line, like right here, but that's why I powdered, so now I can just wipe it away easily. And I'm just gonna blend, 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 make sure the two are nicely blended and the red is kind of showing. And I feel like I love a really nice, good smoky eye sometimes. So these shadows will really like emphasize like either the color of your eye or the actual like smokiness of it. So I just adore this palette overall. And now what I'm gonna try to attempt to do is use this shade Electric, even though like in swatchings, it's not as shimmery as I would want it to be. And I'm gonna try to apply it with my finger on the very center of my lid. It is pretty, especially like with the darker base. I feel like it makes the color really pop. And I'm gonna just kind of blend it in right on the center. And then do the same thing on the other side. And that's gonna just make, the green underneath like pop so much more. And once I have that, I'm gonna go back to the brush that I used the green with and kind of just from both sides kind of blend it in and make sure that there's no harsh edges. But I still want the green, the lighter green, to kind of pop. So make sure you don't blend too much. You can always reapply. And so that'd be it, you guys. That's the finished look. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is just apply some mascara, Man Eater by Tarte. I'm just gonna go in and just apply this all over the lashes. I'm not even gonna do eyeliner, not to take away from the beautiful shadows. And I'm going to apply this on both of my eyes. I really like this mascara and the wand because it kind of separates your lashes and gives you a lot of like volume and length. And so that's it, you guys. That's kind of my 2 cents on this palette. I feel like it is a really great quality eyeshadow palette. It's $42, so it's not too expensive, but the shadows are really pigmented. And as you guys can see, I'll close up a little bit. You can get really beautiful looks, especially smoky eyes with it. It just looks so pretty and so flattering. You just have to kind of take precaution and, you know, be careful with it. But besides, you know, the fallout, I feel like it's a super pigmented, really good quality palette, and I do think it's worth the money, especially if you don't have any, you know, really interesting pieces in your collection. This could be definitely it. And like I said, I adore how this look came out. I feel like it's really deep, smoky, creamy. Like you guys saw, like, look, I'll even show you up close. Like, these shadows are really nicely blended in. Like, there wasn't any skipping, there wasn't any, you know, color changing or anything like that. Like some of the YouTubers like actually, you know, claim that there is. It's because, you know, they don't use the right techniques in order to use super pigmented shadows. So once, you know, my tips would be: number 1, powder underneath; number 2, set your primer. Don't use like any wet medium, you know, either concealer to cut your crease or, you know, a primer. Make sure you set it. And once that's done, you know, you have a beautiful canvas to do like a beautiful look. And so yeah, that's the finished look, you guys. I really hope you guys enjoy this look and this palette. I usually don't do like a lot of, you know, makeup tutorials, so I need to do a few more. I will post another video of just swatching this palette just so you guys can see how pigmented it is. And so that'd be it, you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. I also wanted to mention that for the other Modern Renaissance palette, I feel like there was a lot of hype in the very beginning that this is super highly pigmented and it has a lot of fallout too, but that kind of, you know, like went away with time and people just fell in love with it because they learned the right way to use it. And so I feel like this palette is going to be like a similar thing going on, so we'll see. And that'd be it. Once again, thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart for watching. I do have a giveaway, a surprise August giveaway that I will link down below if you guys are interested. And subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. You can follow me on Instagram, superlady246. I do more of like a daily postings on there. And so lots of love, mwah, from me to you. Stay happy, stay positive, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.